So I presume I've got a little bit of extra time at the end, Philip, since we started a little bit late, talking about the current pandemic crisis and how that impacts business continuity and employment during times of pandemic. So a very topical article here today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to go down the line and ask my panelists to give a quick 60, 90-second introduction to themselves, who they are, where they work, and what they do. And then we'll get into some questions. Paige, do you want to start us off since you just hit your mute button?
Yeah, exactly. So Paige Jeffrey, I work with Trace3, and I am a cybersecurity consultant and program manager. And my cyber background is primarily in GRC and compliance assessment and also strategy.
Hey, great, thank you. Luke, fellow Denverite.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on today. My name is Luke McComey. I work with Coalfire Systems. I'm a CXO advisor overseeing offensive security. I've worked exclusively in the industry in offensive security since about 1996. A lot of the crowd knows me through DEF CON and some of the other security conferences that I've helped run over the years.
Great. Welcome, Luke. Steve.
Hi, Steve Harrington from Mastery. I'm the Managing Director for EMEA. We're a global security provider, global network provider, and UC and contact center. So pretty relevant right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Great. Thank you for joining. Tanya.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tanya Walters. I am based out of Phoenix. So I've been in IT for a little over 20 years now. And relevant, absolutely relevant to this topic is I just got a new job offer as of Friday. So I am going to keep the company name quiet for the moment just because things are still being worked out. But yeah, I've been doing the security thing for a while. I've been working in security for 10, 12 years specifically, with a focus over the last couple of years around vendor products and MSS work.
Okay, great. Welcome, Tanya. And just a few words about me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Richard Stainings. I've been in the space for more than 25 years. I've lost count, it's been so long before we called it cybersecurity, but an infrastructure background before that. And I tend to focus primarily upon the healthcare life sciences industry. I've held most of the C-level roles over the years and been asked to host this panel today. So with that, I'm going to hand over some questions to my my panelists here to warm up and talk about the current crisis. So you know the corona crisis has changed business for most of us. Given that at least 60% of people across North America and Europe are now working remotely from home, that is. What kind of issues are each of you seeing at your companies and at your customers, and how does this change in terms of a lot of the technical questions around VPN load, ISP speed, latency, reliability, licensing, video auditing, conferences, all of these sorts of things. So with that, I'm going to put an open question out there and throw it out to whoever would like to start.
I can give a couple quick ideas. So we've been seeing more bandwidth. So for Trace3, we normally do work from home. It's primarily where people work, but we've been seeing a lot more troubles with the load of people, the number of people on meetings, and the bandwidth. Like basically everybody's kind of not so happy with WebEx right now. And so we're seeing some of that. And also some of the challenges are interesting. So even though most of our workforce does work from home, the interesting part is some of the additional load that is happening because students are working from home. They're also working from home now. So they're also causing a bandwidth issue. So students, especially in high school and college, I can speak to, that they're also going to be working from home and causing some more bandwidth issues. So a few things came to mind.
I think that one of the things that we've seen, we're a security services provider, so we do a lot of pen testing, a lot of red teaming, a lot of that type of work for people. And as customers have been talking to us, we've seen a shift in how they're doing business. You know, most of these businesses have never been prepared to have their entire employee base be work from home. And I think the big things that have really been jumping out for us that we've seen is a lack of overall security that exists in people's shared home networks. So their kids are playing on their tablets and they're bring your own disaster devices. And Lord knows what's on them. And if you're sharing that on the same network as you're trying to do your work on, it's dangerous. So we've seen a big push for people to adopt and use VPNs. We've also seen a huge push with a lot of companies that had older VPN solutions. They're now having to move to something more modern so that it has MFA and other types of solutions that can provide a higher level of security than just some of the older point and click type solutions. We've seen a lot of discussion around people being hacked because of the new Citrix vulnerabilities or RDP servers that are sitting out publicly exposed on the internet. But I think the biggest thing that we're seeing an uptick in, and something that's going to really matter for the listeners on this, is a huge increase in scareware type phishing, where everyone right now is just being slammed with phishing attacks. And a lot of these are pretty advanced attacks. You know, they're not just looking to do a basic harvest of credentials, they're actually exploiting systems. They're gaining footholds inside of environments and networks, and we're seeing that being used for exfiltration of sensitive data and information that shouldn't be leaving their computers.
Yeah, we've noticed that as well, and there's been a 667% increase in phishing attacks in March, according to Barracuda, globally, which is obviously actually, and only 11% were COVID related, interestingly. So it's the the sheer volume of the phishing attacks that are trying to create people who are sitting at home and vulnerable because they're not sat behind a corporate network or firewall policies or centralization of environments, made it much more challenging for them. And you know, people got more time. And then the other thing we're seeing is people loading on private, you know, house party or whatever that might be onto their own devices to go and, you know, do whatever they need to do with their kids, and learning from home creates a much bigger threat environment than happened before. So decentralization is causing some challenges for sure.
And I'll go ahead and chime in after this. In what I've seen are a lot of customers, a lot of people who are going back to basics. So companies that had been looking at expanding programs, maturing their security programs, all of a sudden have to go back and make sure that they've shored up the basics. So starting off with patching, making sure the VPNs are secure, making sure that everyone has, you know, multi-factor, two-factor authentication at a minimum on their home machines if they're using home machines, or if they, you know, any BYOD, or if they're using company authorized devices, just making sure that all of those are at a minimum patched and up to date, and that there's a secure way for people to access their information, whether it's cloud-based or on-prem.
Well, I think the one thing to add to this is the challenge that we're facing that we're not looking at, which is people taking advantage of the fact that we are creating these holes to get everyone online, and maybe setting us up for malware and stuff that activates in the future inside our networks, right? It's as I'm sure many of us have created a hole of some sort to get the users online, to get people working, to get back to business. And inside of that, I bet you we've created holes that have people ready to exploit that. Maybe just keep a piece of sleeper code on our network and wake it up when the time's right.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think to summarize here, this is a whole new risk paradigm, right? We've moved our workforce, as Steve said, from behind a corporate firewall into people's homes, where we're facing very different challenges than we're used to. So we need to reevaluate that model, everything from, you know, our authentication mechanisms right the way down to how our employees connect to our networks, if that's via VPN or whether it's via, you know, web services. Then you know, we need to put in place, you know, sort of more micro segmentation type capabilities for our employees within the confines of their own homes, so that their hacker teenagers aren't necessarily introducing risks to a machine connected directly to the corporate network. So yeah, these are challenging times and call for different measures. So with that, let me move on to my next question, which is around in the same remit here, but the new work model obviously has its risks. Did we or could we have planned for COVID-19 or some other pandemic outbreak in our business continuity plans? Is this something that you and your customers have planned for, this type of event? Or are you all struggling? Are you seeing others struggle in this capacity?
We planned for, yeah, we provide global corporate networks, so we plan all the time for DR, but it's mainly site-based stuff, so if a site goes down and so forth. But one of the challenges here is looking at the workforce, and if they become ill, or a certain percentage become ill, or a significant percentage come ill, so that's a very different shift to people having to work from home. So for example, we have 750 people globally, and we moved to working from home about 3.5 weeks ago now, pretty quickly actually. However, if you start losing a bunch, a significant chunk of your workforce through to illness, that creates a different paradigm that, according to the World Economic Forum, that 98% of businesses didn't actually plan for. They planned for loss of servers or offices and so forth, but physical infrastructure mostly, not necessarily people, and that makes a significant difference on how businesses can operate.
Right. Yeah,
I'll jump in. I think that one of the things that has been interesting in the conversations I've been having over the last couple of weeks with people around, business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning is that, when you look at something like this, an event like this, a worldwide pandemic, it is unique, and the likelihood has historically been viewed as something that's low, right? Like since the invention of the computer, we've never had a world event that has created an incident or a disaster like this. So a lot of businesses out there, although they may have some pre-planning for things like mass sickness, as it was just getting pointed out, or, even losing an office to a terrorist attack or something like that, right? We've seen a lot of businesses kind of build that up since 9/11. When you look at the likelihood and the uniqueness of what we're going through right now, I think that a lot of businesses are really struggling because they haven't done tabletop testing, or they haven't been able to plan and prepare for this type of a situation. My coworker brought up the point, when we looked at traditional BCP and DRP, you talk about hot sites, right? You talk about if we lose a building or if we lose this location, then we can move our workforce over to this other place, or we can spin up these services or these computers. That's not an option here, right? We have no hot sites we can go to. We're all sitting at home. We're all working from home, or at least we should be. And I think that that's one of the things that's been tricky for businesses to figure out is to how to deal with something that is a low likelihood and fairly unique.
Well, I want to add to that, Luke, is think about how much of our business is outsourced to other providers, right? Providers in less developed countries. And in the US, I think we can say it's like we survived pretty well. I expected the networks to completely crash, and it didn't. But how many of these other countries rely on public infrastructure that is not as sound as the infrastructure we have, yet they're processing our payroll, they're processing our transactions, they're processing our audits, various things like that, that is not running to the same standards as we have in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. Comments from other panelists here?
I've seen problems mostly with customers, with my customer base, losing their workforce, not being prepared to work from home. The company that I was with and am now moving away from, most everybody worked from home, so that wasn't an issue. So the resources were already there, the cloud-based data and the ability to access it. So with that already in place, really the big change was travel. Not being able to get in front of customers and to see people face to face. But I've seen more challenges on the customer side. Customers that are insurance companies, law firms, healthcare companies that have had that their business model is built around either people being directly in an office or working directly with the public in the case of SLED or federal entities. I've seen a big change there where there was a lack of preparedness. So, with disaster recovery plans, as as mentioned a minute ago, people will plan for, for the hot sites or for, nuclear war or for, the dropping of a transcontinental connection, that type of thing, making sure that we can spin up another site. But you can't spin up another person. That's been the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely agreed with all the panelists. It's if you're not used to working from home, it's certainly a different approach. And I think that a lot of companies have been caught off guard. I mean, when you go through risk evaluation, you don't go to the 2% chance of a global pandemic. I mean, it never came up.
Yeah, this is a once in a century event, right? I mean, Spanish flu was the last big pandemic. Obviously long before a lot of people in the world even had electricity, let alone computers and home internet connection. So I think this is a challenge for all of us, and hopefully we're learning some lessons from this, right? In terms of our BCP DR plans and how we continue to ensure that our organizations can function in this new environment. So yeah, thank you. So what advice, given that we've heard about the issue, and I don't think we've really hit the curve yet or hit the peak yet, but we've heard the issue of employees, and I know from a lot of the hospitals that I work with that a lot of their staff are already out sick, right, before the pandemic really takes hold here in the States or in the UK. What are we doing about ensuring that we have coverage for our staff? Are we cross-training? Are we making sure that we don't have single points of failure within our organizations from a security operations perspective particularly? And what advice would you give to security professionals out there who are unemployed or underemployed right now?
Well, I was patient zero in our company. I recovered about 4 or 5 days ago from it, so I've had it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I wouldn't recommend it, by the way. Thoroughly unpleasant. But yeah, and so it didn't floor out. There was 9 of us actually in our group went skiing, and we all got it. And we're all different professions. So the interesting thing was looking at the 9 people and the individuals and how it affected their business. They went from PR to self-employed. One worked for the NHS here actually, and so on. The vast majority of people will be able to, hopefully not go to hospital. Only 20% people by the looks of it do, so 80% don't. Of the ones that we've seen up first up, and experienced directly, a modicum of work was possible for most of us. So hopefully for most organizations, a modicum of work will be possible for a lot of people. But I mean, in our organization, we have technical staff, and of course we cross-train and so forth. So we've always planned for that anyway. But so from our organization's point of view, it's quite a challenge. And then very quickly on the second bit, I think in terms of professionals in the industry, now's the time to network, do events like this, find out who's around, who's looking, who's expanding, who's growing, whose needs like yours in Denver are increasing exponentially, and obviously network with those individuals and learn all the soft skills you can, and make sure you keep an eye on the market and see what's going, just like you would in any situation, but very specifically now.
Right.
So from my perspective as somebody who has just barely come from the job hunting market, there are a lot of people out there that are still looking for positions, people that are looking for new positions or looking for change. So my advice to anyone who is looking to fill positions, whether it's temporary or permanent, if you have people that are shifting around, there are a lot of opportunities out there, so don't give up. If you're on the hunting side and if you're on the employer side, my one piece of advice is to look outside of your normal veins of recruiting. So just as medical schools are starting to release, resident doctors, young doctors from their programs early to go out and help, we should also make sure to look at, the early stream of people coming into the industry, such as those people that are in college or in master's programs, because they might be able to jump in, fill a position where you can promote somebody else who has been cross-trained, who has experience, or is familiar with your company, so that you can elevate everybody else to make sure that all the positions are filled and that all your customers are taken care of.
And I would add,
yeah, go ahead.
I would add, if you're on the blue team side, you can certainly make contact with the local ISC squared chapters. They are usually in contact with a lot of the businesses and know what's going on. On the red team side, certainly get in contact with the local rangers, get involved with them. Again, they would know who would be looking for resources and who needs what.
Coalfire, you know, it's interesting. We expected this to be a bit of a hit, and yet we just had a record month this last month. We're doing very well in business. We're actively hiring. We have several hundred roles open and available right now, not just in offensive security and red teaming and pen testing, but people that are working in compliance, people that are working in security engineering, and designing a lot of these security programs for businesses right now that are struggling. So, you know, as Tanya pointed out, we are hiring. A lot of other businesses are hiring right now. I think that one of the things that's key that I would recommend is try to figure out something that you can do in your resume or on your LinkedIn, or in these face-to-face meetings that you're doing over Zoom that really separates yourself and shows why you're unique and different than a lot of the other people out there that are looking for work right now. I had a candidate this last week that failed to tell us as we were talking to them about the different types of work they were doing. They had a very light resume from a professional sense, but when we started talking to them, we found out that they, you know, were one of the top people on Hack in the Box. So on their own research and their own time and the things they were doing at their house, they had experience that we can use to help, you know, kind of shoo them into a position where they've been able to demonstrate that they're skilled. So try to find out, you know, try to think of that one thing that can be a +1 for you. I think it'd be really special right now.
Yeah, and
I'd also say,
go ahead, Paige.
I was just going to say, I'd also say consider contract work. This is going to be a temporary thing. I've heard a lot of different guesstimates about how long this is going to last, from months to the rest of the year, but consider contract work, part-time temporary work to, you know, ride this storm out. And I think that we've been trying to help industries realize you don't have single points of failure. As far as resources go, you know, are you cross-training and so forth. I think we've been doing that for a long time, and this certainly will hit home if any businesses hadn't really taken that one to heart. But as Tanya said, you could consider there's going to be a lot of people that are out of work, and again, even temporarily, you have a lot of people in the services industry that could help do some cross work. Computers are certainly not new to many of the generations, certainly not the newer generations too. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done. It will shift. I think cybersecurity is a great place to be in because it's obviously shifting in that direction. But yeah, consider contract and part-time work, and do as much as you can to network.
Yeah, good.
It's a great way to get the foot in the door.
Good points. And I was going to reiterate very similar points there around you know the cross training of existing staff and the opportunity to you know to bring in contractors, or for those who are already contracting, maybe to you know to up their work to support multiple companies right now in this time of need. But I think this may be an opportunity. Sorry, this may be an opportunity for us to bring in additional people to the cybersecurity industry. You know, from cross training, from IT infrastructure and similar application development and other similar professions, to bring them in to help fill our ranks. I mean, there is a 12x demand over supply for security professionals. You know, in the Western world right now, we have not been able to reduce that number over the last 5 years. And I think we could do do everything in our power to bring more people in. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to very quickly add as well. I think doing some charity work at the moment, and the NHS in the UK asked for volunteers, and 750,000 people volunteered, right? But if you're in this industry, you have a pretty unique set of skills that you can bring to the table that a lot of other people don't. So doing that work for however long you can afford it would always looks good on your CV, I would say.
It's a good time to be a mentor. If you know, with our unique skill set, pretty much everybody here and probably most people that are attending this forum are people with experience or multiple years of experience under their belts. And it's a great time to be able to help and mentor other people.
Yeah. Okay, all very, very good points. Okay, so how is this going to help us plan and navigate, a post-lockdown world where, COVID-19 and fear of other possible contagions will possibly play a major role in your work?
Well, we're all going to get really good at video chatting. Being able to converse and speak with people, through technological mediums, and be able to express opinions and work with our customers to be able to understand what their problems are and help them out, and not relying on face-to-face. So it's going to give us an advantage in building our interpersonal skill set for sure.
Mm-hmm. Good. Others on the team?
Could just look to more flexibility. Like I said, if people hadn't received a message of flexibility or ability to work from home or work from wherever, I think that's going to be even more important now, and to not have single points of failure.
Yeah, I think also I totally agree. And obviously agility, you got to be able to spin stuff up really quickly. So cloud-based stuff is going to accelerate even further than it already has. And thank God most companies have gone down that road. Otherwise they really would be in trouble right now. But also I wonder how many people are going to actually go back to an office. All right. So some people are going to get used, some people hate it. Some people are going to get used to it. Some people love it. And it depends if your kids are around or not for a lot of people, I'm sure. But going back to the office might be, alien and strange for people after 2 or 3 months. So that could become very much a permanent fixture of our economies moving forward, which will be good and interesting, and the way that we diverse the technologies that we use.
I think that you're going to see a blurring of, and I mean, we already are, right, with the video conferencing, but I think you're going to see a blurring of people's personal and professional lives a bit more. I think that people are going to become more inundated with their work from a day-to-day standpoint. I've worked from home for 15 years now, and the biggest thing I've learned through that, the biggest challenge I've had is learning to maintain a life-work balance. And I think that a lot of people who are used to working in an office environment, who are used to taking 15-minute, cigarette breaks twice a day and taking that hour-long lunch, that as they move into having it directly in front of them, in a bedroom or in their office, wherever it's at, I think that we're going to see people struggling to maintain an appropriate life-work balance. So I think that that's the biggest tip I would tell to a lot of people that are watching this or on this call right now is, wake up in the morning, put on your company shirt, do these video conferences whenever you have the opportunity, but really maintain a schedule. When 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock hits and you're done with your workday, go spend that time with your family, do the chores you have around the house, do the things that keep us human and are part of your regular day-to-day type operation.
And I can actually echo that, because having worked from home for a while, the blurring got really bad. And when the phone rings, you kind of run to it and you answer it no matter what time it is. And I struggled with that, and I was kind of glad to be back in an office at times. And now being back at home, trying to definitely put structures in place to go, okay, this is work time, this is not work time. And still struggling with it.
I'd like to go back to Steve's earlier point, actually, about about the what do we do? Do we go back to commuting to an office? And I think, quite frankly, the cat is out of the bag, right? I think employers now have recognized the fact that, hey, you can run your business with employees at home, sitting at their own desks, using their own internet bandwidth, rather than paying $2,000 per square foot for downtown, offices where employees have to commute 2 hours a day back and forth in their cars or taking public transportation that they hate, right? And they come in with the wrong, the lack of positive mental attitude when they arrive in work in the morning, and probably go home, just dying to get back to their families. There are a lot of advantages to people working at home, right? Not just the, the commuting time, the pollution time, or the amount of pollution that's being generated by us all commuting every day, the expense of downtown real estate, the inconvenience. And I think the working from home model provided you can achieve that work-life balance. And I've been working from home for, you know, probably 20 odd years, primarily when I'm not on a plane at a customer somewhere. You get used to that. But I think, you know, the flexibility that it offers is advantageous to companies and to businesses, right? I take calls at 9 o'clock at night in other time zones, or at 5 o'clock in